Good morning and welcome to America's Home Cooking. Now we're going to start putting this bread together. And the yeast that has been sitting for 2 days has died. So what they're doing is they are going to take the sourness of this yeast dying, and that's where you're going to get your sourdough flavor from, because it's completely dead. There is nothing here in that aspect. All right, so we need 1 package of dry yeast. Now we're going to add yeast. So this is pretty much like making the bread without it. You need how many teaspoons? I can't remember. 2.5, if I remember correct. 2 1/4, wait a minute. No, it's 2 1/4 for every packet. So if you're buying a jar, it's 2. As you can tell, I don't use it often, so I have to remember it's 2 1/4 teaspoons. And we are going to add a teaspoon of sugar. We want 3/4 of a cup of water. We want 1/2 cup of milk. The reason I'm not proofing it, and we need 1/4 of a cup of oil. The reason I'm not proofing it is I know I just bought that yeast, so I don't have to proof it. I've got the date and everything down perfect. Okay, and you need 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm going to add a tablespoon of wheat germ. Really should add 2 to this recipe because of the amount of flour. We're going to add 4 tablespoons of powdered milk. And let's see. Okay. We're going to start adding flour to this, but the flour you have to have for this one has to be bread flour, and we're going to use about 6.5 cups. So we're going to be using a lot. I'm going to put 2 cups in to start beating it. Now, if your yeast has been sitting around and you want to proof it, you put the sugar and the water and the yeast together and give it time to proof. That's why those dates on yeast are very, very important. I'm going to add another 2 cups, only because I know how much liquid I have. All right, that's 4 cups total right now. Now, there are 4 kinds of sourdough bread starters. Well, one is really a cheap way of doing it. And that is companies, unless you know the company well, they add vinegar to their bread. Gives it that sourness, and they call it sourdough, but it's not. All it is vinegar added to it. So that's the lowest. I mean, if you have 4 levels, that is the lowest I would do. This one is pretty much like making regular bread. They kill the yeast to give it the sourdough, and they add fresh yeast to it to get the lift that they're doing. This is a one-time sourdough that you're making. You only have it one time, but it's no different. It doesn't have all the microbes that you need in it, which your body needs. I'm putting 2 cups out here so I can take it out of the bowl. Now the one that, so that one's in 2nd place, as you can see. Now the one that's right below the top one is the 2-week yeast. It only survives 2 weeks, but it is no different than the one that you only use one time. And the fact that you're still using the packets. So you're only getting that 1 microbe, because when you do the 2-week, you seal it up. So you put a potato in it and water and sugar. And this one, you sealed it up again. So you're still getting that 1 microbe. Now the top of all sourdoughs is the one that lasts forever, as long as you feed it, because you just use bread flour and water, and you have to wait and catch those microbes in the air. Now that is the original sourdough, but companies and stuff have figured out shorter cuts of making and cheaper cuts of making sourdough. But if you want to get the microbes that you really need, you're going to have to do the number 1 starter, which is the real sourdough, which is the bread flour and the water and catching those microbes. So there are 4 kinds of sourdough, from the cheapest, I call the cheapest the fakest, to all the way to the original. So this one would be in 3rd place, because I did use, but they're using a yeast that died, which gives that sourness to it. But it's still just like any other bread that you make. You only get that 1 microbe, but the one I do has over 400, and that's my wild yeast, and that is the top. That's why San Francisco does it this way. They hold the title of sourdoughs. And any sourdough recipes compared against it. And they never beat them. They are just that good because they use the original sourdough. And that culture, if you hand it down and people feed it all the time, the culture will last until you quit feeding it and it dies. It will just keep on growing. As long as you feed it, work with it, it'll keep going. But this one is just a one-time shot. But it's not really sourdough. They just took one yeast packet, fed it, and you stirred it down, and it just died. And they said that's sourdough. And you're probably saying, are those microbes important? Yes, they are in your system. They help your body break down nutrients in your system so you can get those nutrients. That's why I spend the time doing it, feeding it. Though I did kill it one time, I forgot about it. And had to restart it. But that's the one you really, really want. Because if you can take all the vitamins and stuff, but that digestive system, if it's not there, it's not going to work. And what's beautiful about the microbes, they sit there and break down the sugar in the sourdough bread. They actually eat it. That starch is what they need, and they eat it like crazy. So they help also as well. This bread is acting like it would be a very chewy bread. But I could be wrong. Now, I don't think you would need a half a gallon of making your own sourdough like I do. I have half gallons of my liquid and sponge culture because I do a lot of baking and I depend upon it. But you can make a smaller batch, keep it in the refrigerator. If you just have, you know, you don't eat a little bit of bread and stuff or rolls, you can sit there and do that. Then you wouldn't have to add as much water and flour as I do. But do, you know, think about it. These are quarter turns that I'm making to work it in, the flour in. Okay, I think they want me to rise this or am I shaking? Okay, we're gonna have to grease a bowl and let this double in size. So I'm going to have to clean it, my bowl out, because I use the same bowl. bowls to make bread. So they said, oh, you can make it in glass, you can make it in metal. No, you really can't. They really need one of these ceramic bowls that are very, very heavy. It holds the heat in for them so the yeast can stay warm and do what it has to do. I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 bowls. I even have one bigger than this one. I'm making 4 loaves of bread at a time. You don't realize how much bread you're using, or where it's in food and stuff, but it really is. You do use a lot. It's a staple in the house. You do have to grease your bowl, because if you don't, you'll notice that the dough will stick, and also if you don't grease the dough all over, it will dry out. So I'm going to put it upside down, twist it to make sure the top is greased, and then you flip it over and it's well greased. Now we are going to set this to the side. You're going to have to put a towel over it because this is not really a real sourdough. So cover it and we'll wait till it doubles. And I will see you then. Okay, the bread has doubled. Now there's a trick when you're dealing with bread and it's doubled. You cannot afford to have this thing collapse, because if you do, you've lost it. So when it gets doubled and you have to grease the pan or something to get the rest of the stuff together, 2 fingers, punch it in and force it down. That way your bread won't get thrown out, because some people let it rise, and then they go and do their pans and stuff and they notice the whole thing has collapsed inward and they lose it. Now you're going to have to grease a pan, some sort of, let's see, grease a baking sheet. Okay, that's what they want. So I'm going to use this. This is going to make 3 loaves of French bread, so I'm going to use this. Let's pray they fit in here. Now they state they want to have a slightly floured working area, so I'm going to have to get my flour back out. And remember, this is bread flour we're using. Bread flour gives more of a chewy texture to your bread. You said lightly. The flour area. See how nice that is? It comes out really, really nice. Just gonna knead it a little bit and then we're gonna shape it up. Now you're going to divide this dough into thirds because we're making 3 loaves, so you're going to divide it. You can pinch it or get a pastry separator. I'll be right back. They have a cutter for dough. Now they tell you to roll this out a 10. Hold on, where did I stick that? They want you to roll this out to a 10 by 5 rectangle. Don't use a rolling pin doing breads, but I'll do it for this one. Okay, that's about the size they want. Now you're going to roll this up. Pinch your seams together and the ends. Because if you don't, it's going to fall apart. And you're going to cut it seam side down. Put on the grease cookie sheet, like the baking sheet. I usually use cookie sheets, but this time I'm not. That's why you hear me say cookie sheet instead of baking dish, because I usually pull my cookie sheets out. But because this was 3, I knew I was going to need my baking sheet. And when you roll it out like this, you're really pushing a lot of bubbles out. Well, I think that's what they want you to do. So you don't have too many air bubbles in it. Okay, that's about 5. Roll your long side up. Pinch your ends and your seams. Put the seam side down. Doesn't have much of a sour taste. I don't know why I call it sourdough French bread. I guess the flavor will be there. Now here they are, and now I'm going to let them rise. How much do they want? Start with along with them. They want you to, once again, cover them and let them rise in a warm place until double. Okay. Oh, it's going to stay on the table. It's big now. Now, if you have a warm kitchen, it might rise a little faster. They say an hour, but don't be surprised if it rises a little faster. If your kitchen's a little on the cold side, it will sit there and take a little longer, but it has to rise till double. All right, and then I'll be back. Okay, preheat your oven to 450. I know, a 97-degree day, and here I am turning the oven. So I'm getting this done early this morning. All right, you need 1 tablespoon of cold water. And 1 egg white. This is the glaze. Brush. Okay. Okay, they want us to put the glaze on before we actually cut these. Stay cool today because we've got a scorcher. I'm up north, so we have the hurricane coming up here, so I know how hot it's going to get. But they said it should break sometime tomorrow or tonight. All right, you're going to take a knife and put 2 slashes in it. You don't have to go deep, but you do have to slash them. That's it, they're ready to go into the oven. You just have to wait for the oven to get up, Sarah. And they will be cooking for 30 minutes. Wait for the oven and then I will be back. Okay, it's at 450, so these are going to cook for 30 minutes and then we'll see how they come out. Hopefully beautifully. See you in 30 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. pans, you've got to get it onto a rack, or the bottom part of it will start going back to dough. That's why we always take our breads off and get them on the rack right away. Then you have it in a bread pan. If it's bread, see how pretty they are? That does have a tartness to it, not real strong underlining, but it's good bread. But like I said, it's not the top of sourdough, because it doesn't quite taste like sourdough, but there is a sourness to it, but not like you get on the other ones. So each one, according to which sourdough you use, if you use the 1 day or the 2 week, or you use the one that goes on, or if you use vinegar, you'll see each one has a slightly different flavor. But the original one is that number 1, which you have to feed every day, and just use flour and bread flour and water and capture those microbes. But these are all of different levels, except that one is the top one of making sourdough. So take care and have a lovely day. Stay cool.